Apparently, this guy has some really good hand-eye coordination. Hey, it's Justin here at This Justin. How are you doing? I'm here to bring you the next entry in the Read Every Book by Stephen King challenge. Yes, I'm reading every book by Stephen King. My dear friend Michael K. Vaughan has taken on this challenge himself. He spun the wheel. It landed on Stephen King, my poor friend. So I'm helping him out. I'm accompanying him anyway. I don't know that I can help him out with this, but I can at least be there for him. I can be support. We can go through this together. We are reading every book by Stephen King. This is going to take years, I'm aware, and we're probably in the best of King at this point. It's not too far from now where things might start to go downhill. But right now I'm going to enjoy the quality Stephen King reading that we're doing. And right now that quality Stephen King reading includes his first short story collection, Night Shift. Night Shift. Did I say that correctly? I think I did. Stephen King's Night Shift, his first short story collection. As I understand it, what happened, the way this book came about was that Stephen King was in the midst of writing The Stand, and he had an obligation to Doubleday to put out a book a year, and he wasn't sure if he was going to finish The Stand in time, so I said, hey, what about a short story collection? I got all these short stories that I wrote. I sold to magazines like Cavalier and Penthouse, and well, why don't we put them in a short story collection? We can release that as a book in Doubleday. And, all right, King, I guess. It might not do that well. We're only going to print just a little bit of this book, but we'll do that for you. And sure enough, it sold really well, and it's become one of Stephen King's more well-known short story collections. It's a really great one, too. Night Shift is one of my favorite King books, one of my favorite King short story collections. I remember reading it clearly, very clearly, reading this when I was 12 or 13, and enjoying it and getting freaked out by it. I in particular was freaked out by this cover. Had this, of course, as I've mentioned before, part of this journey for me is a trip to nostalgia, and this cover in particular strikes me because I remember being very creeped out by this cover when I saw it as a youngster. And of course, it is creeping out my 8-year-old son too, and he'll sometimes tell me to turn the book over, so I'll turn it over so that he doesn't have to look at the creepy hand with the eyes staring at him. But anyway, so like I was saying, lots of memories tied to this book, so I was really looking forward to diving into this one in particular. So let's talk about the short stories in Night Shift for a minute. A lot of them have this kind of EC Comics feel, these shock twist endings, a lot of them kind of gruesome, and they're also, and I think Mike mentioned this as well, they also very much have a Richard Matheson feel to them, and there's also a story in here that to me seems like a kind of a more twisted Ray Bradbury, but that might be because I was reading some Ray Bradbury around the time I was first reading Night Shift. But anyway, let's go through some of the standouts in this. I'm not going to go story by story, but let's talk about some of the standouts in Night Shift. So we start with Jerusalem's Lot, which I thought worked really well. It of course takes place in the same universe as Salem's Lot, the novel, the vampire novel Salem's Lot. It's an epistolary format, and it takes place in the 19th century, and it has an ending, a great ending. I thought a great ending. Kind of a Lovecraft ending, though maybe not as detailed as you might find in a Lovecraft story, but I enjoyed it a whole heck of a lot. We also have some other standouts. We have, Battleground. Battleground is one of the stories that I remember most from when I first read this. Battleground is a story about a hitman who goes home, some high-rise apartment in the city, and he has a delivery, a package, a box, and he opens it up and finds that it is a bunch of G.I. Joe dolls that come to life and attack him. They get in their helicopters and they get in their jeeps and they attack him. And it sounds silly and ridiculous, and it kind of is, but it works really well as an action thriller piece, and it's kind of comedic, but it's still kind of exciting and still a lot of fun. I like this story a lot. I don't care what you say. Battleground is a great fun story. One story that I didn't remember quite as well from reading when I was younger, but struck me a little more this time when I read it, is Sometimes They Come Back, which is a pretty creepy, effective story about a man who's I think he's a high school teacher, and he had this tragic event in his past when he was young, where his brother was killed by these hoodlums, I guess, and they just mindlessly kill this guy's brother, and of course this event has haunted him, and he's teaching at this high school, and one by one these same kids that killed his brother show up as students in his class at the same age. So they've come back they've come after him, and it has an ending that kind of comes out of nowhere, but I think I liked anyway. There's particular something that he does that the way King describes it's kind of funny but kind of unsettling at the same time. I won't give it away. It's hard not to give away too much because these are short stories, and these particular short stories tend to be very short, and but it's hard. So it's hard not to give a whole lot away when I'm talking about the short stories in Stephen King's Night Shift. The ending had something gruesome in it that I liked a lot. I thought it was pretty cool, and also this kind of haunting theme of past tragic events, kind of coming back and having a lasting effect on you. I thought that was a pretty effective, pretty interesting theme. Let's see, one of the weaker stories, probably the weakest story in this collection, Strawberry Spring, which I didn't remember much at all from when I had read it before, and I can really see why. It's one of the shorter of the stories, and he's just trying really hard. He's trying a different style. It doesn't work at all, and there's a twist ending to it that really didn't sit well with me. It's about a serial killer who's terrorizing this college campus, killing some students, and the main character is, if I describe much more, it's obvious what's going on, and when you get to the last sentence, it's supposed to be the shocking last sentence, you're like, okay, that's what I thought was going on the whole time, and you were taking a lot longer to get there, and it's such a short story. Anyway, short story, felt too long. Strawberry Spring, it's the worst of the bunch. The Ledge, however, is another one of my favorites that I recall from my childhood. It's about a tennis player who ends up falling in love with and having an affair with the wife of some kind of mafia guy or something. Some guy that lives in a penthouse and has some thugs with him. And so what the guy does is says, hey, I'll let you and my wife go if you can walk around the ledge, the 5-inch ledge, all the way around from my penthouse, and make it all the way around. So the bulk of the story is this guy doing that, and I liked it. It's tense. 13-year-old Justin thought it was pretty cool, pretty exciting, and I still think it is. This is one of my favorites. And let's see, Quitters Inc. is another one that stood out. One thing I forgot to mention is that King has this approach he'll take or this way of coming up with story ideas sometimes, in which he'll pose this what if question. And, for instance, what if a box of G.I. Joe dolls suddenly came to life and attacked somebody? Or what if, in the case of Quitters Inc., what if the mafia ran a business that was to help you stop smoking? And I like these what if type ideas, and it gives, I feel like I give King a little more leeway on some of the more ridiculous stories, because I'm thinking of them, okay, this is his what if exploration of this idea, and this kind of, and Quitters Inc. seems a lot like that. And I think King was probably quitting smoking around this time as well, so this might also have a personal element to it. But Quitters Inc. is about a guy who runs into an old friend, and he's impressed at how well his old friend is doing. His old friend has quit smoking, but this guy is, addicted chain smoker, and so he gives him a card and says, oh, I quit smoking and I use Quitters Inc. and here's their card, you should check them out. And of course he checks them out, and well, once he finally agrees and he signs on. And so the idea is that if he lapses, then they'll do terrible things to his wife, they'll do terrible things to his children. I mean, they get progressively worse. First it's just some electric shock that's not lethal or not too dangerous, but things will gradually get worse if he continues to lapse. And so it's kind of a crazy, fun idea. I like this story a lot. One of the stories that I didn't enjoy as much this time as I remember enjoying the first time around was Children of the Corn. Not sure why I didn't quite connect with it this time. It's one of the longer stories in the book, and maybe I was just feeling rushed by the time I got to it. It's late in the book, and by that time I kind of got used to this rhythm of 10-page stories, and so maybe I was just feeling a little impatient, or maybe it's just the mood I was in at the time I read it. I might give it another read. It's about this married couple, this bickering. Obviously, their marriage is doomed. They're traveling through Nebraska, the middle of nowhere, and they have this encounter that I won't describe, and they end up in this town that seems to have been deserted for years, but really there's this group of children there, and well, these children are up to no good, and this couple, well, they don't end up anywhere good, and it's all right, I guess. Maybe I'll read it again just to see if I can connect with it once more, but it's Children of the Corn. I can take it or leave it right now, I think. The story that most affected me when I read this as a 12 or 13-year-old was The Last Rung on the Ladder. This is a short story in Night Shift that made me cry at the time quite a bit. I didn't cry this time when I read it. Not that it didn't move me, but I didn't cry. It's about this brother and sister, and the brother ends up, when they're kids, he saves his sister's life. I think she's 8 and he's 11 or so, I think. And there's an incident in a barn in a hayloft, and he ends up saving her life. And then again, it's a very short story, so if I go into too much detail, I'm giving away most of it, so I don't want to go too much into it. But it's sad. It's a very sad little story, and it's kind of maybe a sibling version of Cats in the Cradle, except with a little bit more tragic of an ending. So yeah, it might be a little heavy-handed, but I didn't care. I didn't. I was 12, 13. It really struck me pretty hard, and it didn't strike me quite as hard this time. But I still felt a pull on the story. And it ends with the woman in the room, which I didn't connect with at all when I was 12 or 13, and it's kind of might have a bit more of a mature theme. It's about a man whose mother is dying of cancer, and kind of the way he, again, I don't want to give too much away. It's a sad story. One thing that struck me more with it this time was the relationship with the mother and son, and the dialogue, the conversations that they have, I found very kind of touching, kind of sweet and touching, and it's a sad story, and I guess it too is pulled from some real life things for Stephen King. His mother died of cancer. I understand around the time Carrie was published, so it's a story that King wrote from his heart. But it's an interesting way to end the book, kind of a sad, melancholy ending to the book. Melancholy? I'm not sure that's the right word, but it's a sad way to end Night Shift. But it's a great collection of short stories. It might be my favorite. Now, I understand a lot of King fans favor Skeleton Crew as their favorite collection of King short stories, and I don't know that I would disagree yet. When I get this Skeleton Crew and read it, we'll see. I know Skeleton Crew holds at least one of my most memorable King short stories, and when we get there, we'll talk about that. But just for nostalgia alone, I think Night Shift holds a special place in my heart. One of the first King books I've read, and one of the first kind of adult books that I read when I was very young. So Stephen King's Night Shift, I love this book quite a bit. The next King book that I'll be tackling is The Stand. this might be my favorite Stephen King book. I don't know, could be. I think I've read the early version twice, and then I read the uncut longer version once after that. So it will be my fourth reread of The Stand altogether. So yeah, I did like this book. Do like this book. It has been years since I've read it though, but we'll see. We'll see how it is. And I am currently reading Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, the 1818 text, of course. It is apparently the superior version, as Michael K. Vaughan so recently discussed in a video of his. Luckily, I already had a copy of this by the time he was talking about it, so I felt like I was right there with him on this. I'm really enjoying it so far. I can't wait to get through this. And then after that, we'll see what comes after that. I'm not going to commit myself to much else other than getting through Frankenstein, and then at some point reading the massive version of Stephen King's already massive book, The Stand. All right, thanks for sticking it out this long. If you are here with me still, I really appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye. Good night, good evening, good morning, whatever. Bye.